Right now, on a coral reef somewhere in the world, a crime is happening. A fish has just been swallowed without a chase. A weapon has just been stolen from one animal and embedded into the body of another. A predator has just convinced its prey to swim straight into its mouth. A male is currently giving birth. A female is, at this exact moment, transforming into a male. And somewhere in the shadows, a small striped fish is charging at something 100 times its size, daring it to come closer. The coral reef is not what you think it is. The coral reef is a crime scene. And the criminals living on it are smarter, weirder, and more ruthless than almost anything you have been told. I have spent the last several months building a case file on 8 of them. 8 ocean criminals, 8 specialists. 8 animals that in their own way have figured out how to thrive in a world where every single creature is either hunting or being hunted, and most of the time, both at once. You are going to meet a thief who walks across the seafloor carrying portable armor, a brawler who fights duels over a single piece of stone, an enforcer who only works the night shift, a gangster who lives inside a venomous fortress and pays rent in nitrogen, a sniper who kills with vacuum pressure instead of teeth, an assassin disguised as a piece of grass, a vandal who turns out to be the reef's most important worker. And finally, an artist who steals weapons from other animals and wears them like jewelry. Some of these animals you have heard of, none of them are what you think they are. Before we begin, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button. If even half the people watching this right now subscribed, this channel would double overnight. It costs you nothing. It tells the algorithm that this content matters, and it means I can keep doing this. When you finish this video, drop a comment and tell me which of these 8 criminals impressed you the most. I read every single one, even the ones that disagree with me, especially the ones that disagree with me. So get comfortable, dim the lights if you can, and let me show you what is actually happening underneath the surface of the most beautiful ecosystem on this planet. The case files are open. The suspects are waiting. Let us meet them. I want you to picture a crime scene with me. A crab is walking across the reef floor. It is doing what crabs do, sidestepping, claws raised, not particularly worried about anything in particular. The water is calm. The sun is filtering down through the surface. Nothing in the frame looks wrong. And then, in the space of a single heartbeat, the crab is gone. It does not get chased. It does not get bitten. It does not even get a chance to react. One moment it is alive. The next moment a section of the reef that looked exactly like coral rubble has unfolded itself, swallowed the crab whole, and folded back up again, completely indistinguishable from the rocks around it. If you had been watching, you would not have seen what happened. You would have seen a crab, and then no crab, and you would have rubbed your eyes and assumed the camera glitched. That is not a glitch. That is a crime in progress. And the suspect is, in my honest opinion, the most cunning criminal in the entire ocean. The octopus is not the biggest predator on the reef. It is not the fastest. It is not the strongest. It does not have armor. It does not have venom. It does not have a single bone in its body. And yet, in the 8 chapters of this video, in the long list of thieves and liars and assassins we are going to walk through, I want you to know right now that this is the one I think about the most. This is the one that, when I sit down to research these animals, I find myself almost rooting for. Because what the octopus does, it does with style. It does with intelligence. It does with what looks to me like a sense of humor. Let me tell you what I mean. More than half of an octopus's neurons do not live in its brain. They live in its arms. Each of those 8 arms has its own dense cluster of neural tissue, and each of those clusters can make decisions on its own. The arm does not need to ask the brain for permission. The arm tastes. The arm thinks. The arm decides. When an octopus reaches into a crevice to probe for prey, the arm is not blindly fumbling. It is sampling chemicals through suckers that function as tongues. It is measuring resistance. It is mapping the inside of that crevice in a level of detail that, if you tried to draw it out, would look like a topographical map. You are not looking at one mind. You are looking at 9 of them. 1 central, 8 peripheral, all working in concert, all making decisions, all running independent investigations at the same time. Tell me where in the animal kingdom you have ever seen anything like that. And tell me honestly in the comments, because I have not been able to find it anywhere else. The octopus uses this distributed intelligence to do things that no boneless animal has any business doing. Shells that would resist the bite of a much larger predator get opened by an octopus through patient, methodical rotation. The animal does not bash. It does not crush. It tests. It feels for hinges. It applies torque at the exact angle that exploits the structural weakness of the shell. In laboratories, octopuses have been filmed unscrewing jar lids. They have solved mazes. They have figured out how to open child-proof containers that some humans struggle with. And every time we see this behavior, we want to call it a trick. But it is not a trick. It is the same thing the octopus does every night in the wild, when it slides a single boneless arm into a gastropod shell to extract a snail. Strength does not get you into a coiled shell. Precision does. The octopus is precision. Now I want to tell you the part that, for me, is where this animal moves from impressive into something stranger. The disappearing act. Underneath the octopus's skin, there are millions of cells called chromatophores. These are tiny sacs of pigment, each one controlled by a muscle, each one wired directly to the nervous system. The octopus can open and close these cells individually, in real time, at speeds measured in milliseconds. Underneath those, there are reflective cells called iridophores and leucophores that bounce light back at different angles. And on top of all of that, the octopus has muscular projections in its skin called papillae that can raise and lower, changing the texture of the body from smooth to spiky, from sand to coral, depending on what surface it needs to become. The result is something that should not be possible. The octopus does not just change color, it replicates a pattern. It matches the contrast of the surface beneath it. It mimics the texture of coral. It becomes the reef. And the most uncomfortable detail of all, the octopus is colorblind. By every measurement we can make, it cannot see color in the way we do, and yet it produces the most accurate color mimicry on the planet. I have no good explanation for that. Nobody does. If you have a theory, I want to hear it in the comments. There is one more behavior I have to tell you about, because it is the one that genuinely made me sit back in my chair the first time I saw the footage. The coconut shell. There is a species of octopus in the Pacific that, when it finds an empty coconut shell on the sandy seafloor, picks it up and carries it. Not eats it, carries it. Across open ground, awkwardly, 2 arms underneath the shell and the other 6 stilt walking like an animal in a strange suit. It looks ridiculous. It looks comedic. And what it actually is one of the only documented cases of true tool use in an invertebrate. The octopus is carrying portable armor. It is anticipating danger before the danger arrives. It is calculating that the open sand is a vulnerable place to be, and it is bringing its shelter with it, ahead of time, just in case. That is not instinct. That is planning. That is an animal thinking about a future that has not happened yet. And when the danger does arrive, the octopus has more tricks. It can squeeze its entire body through a hole barely larger than its beak, which is the only hard part of its anatomy. It can release a cloud of ink that not only blocks the predator's vision, but interferes with the predator's sense of smell. The ink contains an enzyme that disrupts chemoreception. The escape is layered. It is visual, chemical, and physical, all firing at once. So tell me, in the comments, when you watch this animal disappear, infiltrate, plan, and outthink everything around it, what does that look like to you? Does that look like a simple creature operating on instinct? Or does that look like something genuinely smarter than we have given it credit for? Because to me, this is not just a predator. This is a strategist. The reef does not have a king. The reef has a thief. And the thief has been getting away with it for millions of years, leaving behind nothing but a small puff of sand, settling slowly back into place. Let me take you to a different kind of crime scene. Forget the silent vanishing act of the octopus. Forget the patient strategist. Forget the genius working in the shadows. What I want to show you next is the opposite of all that. This is loud crime. This is rough crime. This is 2 thugs in a dead-end alley, posturing at each other, claws raised, neither one really wanting to fight, but neither one willing to back down either. This is the Reef's street brawler. Two crabs facing each other on a piece of rock no bigger than a dinner plate. Eye stalks lifted like little periscopes scanning for advantage. Bodies tilted at angles that make each one look slightly larger than it actually is. The piece of rock they are fighting over is nothing to you and me. It is just stone. But to a crab, that stone is shade from predators. That stone is access to drifting scraps. That stone is the difference between eating tonight and not eating tonight. So the fight is not stupid. The fight is over the only thing that matters out here, which is real estate. A claw comes down hard, fast enough to crack shell, and stops a hair's breadth from contact. Then the other claw. Then a slow, almost theatrical interlocking, both crabs pushing on each other like arm wrestlers in a bar. There is grunting if you imagine the soundtrack. There is pressure testing. There is, eventually, a decision. The smaller one steps back, slowly, with dignity, limps off to the side, intact, looking for somewhere else to be. And here is the part I love about this. The bigger crab does not chase. The bigger crab does not finish what it started. The fight is over the moment the smaller one yields, because both of them know something that humans took thousands of years of warfare to figure out. Injury is bankruptcy. A damaged claw on this reef means slower feeding, weaker rank, fewer mates, a shorter life. So the violence stops the second it becomes unnecessary. Crabs, the dumb crustaceans we picture pinching toes at the beach, have a more disciplined approach to combat than most of human history. Now let me tell you about the armor, because the armor is where this whole story gets interesting. A crab's body is wrapped in a shell made of chitin, reinforced with calcium salts, locked together into an exoskeleton that doubles as both armor and the anchor point for every muscle in its body. It is, in a real engineering sense, a walking tank. Predators that would crush most invertebrates bounce off a crab's shell. Mechanical stress that would damage soft-bodied animals barely registers. The shell is brilliant. The shell is the reason crabs have been everywhere on this planet for hundreds of millions of years. But the shell comes with a problem. And the problem is one of the more uncomfortable contradictions in nature. The crab cannot grow inside its shell. The shell is rigid. So when the crab needs to get bigger, it has to crack itself open and crawl out of its own armor, soft and pink and exposed. No protection at all, in a state that would make any predator within 100 yards lick their lips. This is called molting. And during molting, the toughest animal on the reef becomes the most vulnerable. It is briefly just meat. So the brawler becomes a fugitive. The street fighter goes into hiding, wedges itself into a crevice, burrows into sand, finds the smallest dark space it can fit into, and waits, hours or days, while the new shell hardens through mineral deposition. And only when the armor is back online does the crab come out swinging again. It is a strange biological cycle. The toughness depends on temporary surrender. Strength depends on knowing when to disappear. Now here is where the crime really gets interesting. Because crabs do not just brawl. Crabs steal. A fish tears into prey somewhere above the reef. Pieces drift down slowly, a soft rain of free food. And before the fish has even finished its own meal, claws are coming out of every crevice within range, racing for the scraps. Crabs are the pickpockets of the underwater world. They convert the inefficiency of bigger predators into their own dinner. They smell carrion in dissolved chemicals carried by the current. They find the dying. They show up before the body has stopped moving. I want you to know something about this, though, because it sounds gross at first. And then you realize how important it actually is. The crab's scavenging is not laziness. The crab's scavenging is the reason the reef does not drown in its own dead bodies. Without these armored cleanup crews, organic matter would sink to the seafloor and rot in places where nothing else could process it. The crabs are recycling nutrients. They are stabilizing the entire system. The reef's pettiest criminals are also its janitors. The theft is a service. And then there is the tide pool. Watch a crab in a shrinking pool of water at low tide, and you will see one of the most efficient opportunists on Earth. Fish trapped in the pool grow sluggish as oxygen levels drop. The crab knows. The crab moves with sudden purpose, sideways, fast, those legs articulated for lateral acceleration that no straightforward swimmer can match. The sideways gait that looks awkward when you watch it on land is, underwater in a tight pool, the most efficient movement possible. The crab is biomechanically optimized for terrain that defeats everyone else. I have to mention the hermit crab here because the hermit crab takes this whole territorial obsession to a level that is honestly almost sad. Hermit crabs do not grow their own armor. They borrow it. They live inside the discarded shells of snails, and the entire reproductive and competitive life of a hermit crab revolves around finding a shell that fits. Too small, and they cannot grow. Too big, and they waste energy dragging it around. When a perfect shell becomes available, hermit crabs will line up in a literal queue, waiting for the next one to upgrade so they can take the empty shell behind it. It is the most polite housing crisis in nature. And there is one more thing I have to tell you before we close this chapter. If a predator grabs a crab by its claw, the crab can choose to let the claw go. Just release it. The limb detaches at a controlled fracture point. The predator is left holding a twitching souvenir, and the crab escapes with 7 working legs and a plan to grow the lost claw back over the next few molts. This is called autotomy, and it is, in its own way, a kind of genius. Trade the limb for the life. Take the loss now, regrow it later. The crab does the math every time, and the math almost always works out in its favor. So here is my question for you in the comments. When you look at a crab, do you see a simple little animal? Or do you see something a lot more strategic than people give it credit for? Because I have watched these creatures for hours, and the more I watch, the more I respect them. They do not have the genius of the octopus. They do not have the speed of the predators we will meet later. But they have something almost more valuable. They have endurance. They have patience. They have the kind of stubbornness that, over hundreds of millions of years, has turned out to be unbeatable. The reef does not have many kings, but it has a lot of brawlers. And the brawlers, in the long run, win. The sun goes down on the reef, and almost immediately, everything changes. The fish that ruled the daytime, the bright reef predators with their fast eyes and their fast strikes, they go quiet. They tuck themselves into coral. They slow down. They become someone else's problem, not yours. The reef that was loud and colorful and busy at noon turns into something else entirely after dark. It becomes a different country, a country with different laws, a country with different rulers. And the rulers of the night are not the animals you would expect. A shadow detaches itself from the wall of the reef. It does not swim. It walks, on articulated legs that move with the kind of deliberate weight you see in a heavyweight boxer warming up before a fight. The antennae come out first, 2 long whips reaching forward into the dark, sampling the water for information. Not light, not vision, information. Chemicals dissolved in seawater, vibrations from passing bodies, pressure changes from distant movement. This animal is not navigating the way you and I would. This animal is reading the water like a blind tracker reads the forest floor, and what it picks up tells it everything it needs to know. The lobster has emerged, and the lobster is on patrol. I want you to know something before we go any further. By day, this animal is a fugitive. By day, the lobster is a hunted thing, pressed into the deepest crevices it can find, body wedged into stone, antennae pointed at the opening like a sentry watching a door. Daytime predators on this reef are equipped with vision systems that the lobster cannot compete with. Fish with eyes built for sunlight. Hunters with crushing jaws, snouts that probe into hiding places. So during the day, the lobster does not fight. The lobster hides. The lobster watches. The lobster waits. But when the sun drops below the horizon, and the chemistry of the lobster's nervous system shifts in response to those changing photons, something else takes over. The animal that was hiding all day comes out. And on a reef where the rules have flipped, where vision has gone dim and chemistry has become king, the lobster is no longer prey. The lobster is the law. Let me explain how this works mechanically, because the engineering of this animal is, in my opinion, criminally underrated. A lobster's antennae are not decorations. They are not fashion. They are scientific instruments. They are lined with thousands of chemoreceptors, each one capable of detecting dissolved compounds in concentrations so small that if you tried to measure them with most laboratory equipment, you would struggle. Every flick of those antennae samples the water column for the scent of prey, the scent of predators, the scent of rivals. The reef at night is invisible to the eye, but to the lobster, it is a glowing chemical map. Every animal that has moved through the area in the last few hours has left a trail. The lobster reads those trails like text. It knows where the food is. It knows where the danger is. It knows in real time who else is out walking tonight. And it does not rush. That is the thing I want you to understand about this animal. The lobster does not panic. The lobster does not sprint. The lobster moves at a steady, methodical, almost meditative pace, conserving energy across hours of patrol because its metabolism is built for endurance rather than speed. While the fast hunters of the daytime burn calories in explosive bursts, the lobster operates on a different schedule. Slow, continuous, efficient, the same way an old detective walks a beat. The reef is a long shift, and the lobster has the temperament for it. Now I have to tell you about the claws. Because the claws are where the enforcer earns its name. In many lobster species, the two claws are not identical. They are asymmetrical and on purpose. One claw is the crusher. It is massive, blunt, packed with muscle fibers designed for one job, which is to apply pressure that can break shell. The other claw is the cutter. Sharper, faster, more like a pair of scissors than a hammer. Two specialized weapons on the same body, each one optimized for a different problem. Crush the snail, cut the shrimp. The lobster is equipped for two different fights at the same time. And here is what those claws mean for the reef. When two lobsters meet in the dark, fighting over a den or a stretch of territory, the confrontation is mostly theater. The crusher claw goes up. The antennae extend. Each animal taps the other, gauging size, gauging strength, gauging whether this fight is worth having. Most of the time, one of them backs down. The one with the smaller crusher concedes. The one with the bigger crusher takes the den. The fight ends before any real damage is done, because both animals know that a damaged claw, out here, is a death sentence. Injury is bankruptcy. The lobster does not get this far in its life by being stupid about combat. But there is a strange detail to this animal that I find quietly fascinating, and I want you to think about it for a second. Lobsters, despite their reputation as solitary armored loners, are not always alone. In some reef systems, multiple lobsters share a single shelter. Loose aggregations, a kind of communal den. The largest individuals usually take positions near the entrance, where they confront threats first, but also catch the first drift of food coming by. The smaller ones move deeper into the crevice, safer, but with less access. It is not friendship. It is not cooperation in the way a school of fish coordinates. It is something more like negotiated tolerance, a working arrangement, a truce in the dark. The reef does not have a king, but it has occasionally a council. Now, let me tell you about molting, because the molt is where the enforcer becomes the most vulnerable creature on the reef. To grow, the lobster has to crack its own armor along predetermined seams and crawl out of it. For hours, sometimes days, the new body underneath is soft, pink, almost translucent. No armor, no protection. The toughest animal in the dark reduced to something a predator could swallow without effort. So during the molt, the lobster retreats, deep, into the safest den it can find. And it waits. Because growth, in this animal, requires a brief and complete surrender of everything that makes it dangerous. There is a behavior in this animal that I have to mention before we close because it changes everything you think about lobsters. In some regions, when conditions trigger it, lobsters migrate. Not alone. In single file. Long processions of lobsters walking across the seafloor, nose to tail, each one maintaining contact with the one ahead through its antennae. It looks almost military. It is one of the strangest things in the ocean, and most people have never seen it. The solitary enforcer turns out to be capable of disciplined collective action when the situation requires it. The patrol becomes an army. So tell me, in the comments, when you watch a lobster move through the dark, slow, deliberate, antennae sweeping ahead of it, what do you actually see? An ugly bottom dweller? Or an animal that has been doing this longer than humans have existed, with patience and precision that most of our species would struggle to match? Because what I see when I watch this animal is authority. Quiet authority. The kind that does not need to shout. The kind that does its job hour after hour while the rest of the world sleeps. The lobster does not own the reef. But for those 8 or 9 hours after sundown, when the chemistry of the water changes and the bright predators go to bed, the lobster owns the shadows. And the shadows on a coral reef are where everything important actually happens. The dawn will come, the lobster will retreat, and the day shift will take over. But until then, until the sun comes back, the enforcer is on duty. I need to start this chapter by ruining something for you. If you, like most people watching this, have a soft spot for the clownfish, if you think of it as the cute little orange and white fish from the children's movie, the friendly little face that swims around in a swaying anemone, the symbol of innocence and family-friendly ocean cinema, I'm going to ask you to set all of that aside for the next 12 minutes. Because what you have actually been looking at this whole time is one of the most ruthless little criminals on the reef. Let me show you what I mean. A clownfish, no bigger than your hand, sees something approaching its territory. The something approaching is a creature hundreds of times its size. It could be a diver. It could be a reef shark. It does not matter. The clownfish does not check. The clownfish charges. Full speed, teeth bared, fins flared, body shaking with the kind of rage you would expect from an animal 20 times its weight. It rams the intruder. It bites. It snaps at fingers, at masks, at gills. It does not back down. It does not even consider backing down. Divers all over the world have come up from coral reefs with little red welts on their hands, and the welts came from a fish that weighs less than a sandwich. Now ask yourself how. How does an animal that small carry that much confidence? The answer is the home. Because the clownfish does not live in just any home. The clownfish lives inside a venomous fortress, and the fortress is the second half of the story. The sea anemone, the soft, flowing, flower-looking thing the clownfish lives inside, is not a flower. It is a predator. Its tentacles are armed with thousands of microscopic capsules called nematocysts. Each one is a coiled, harpoon-shaped weapon that fires the instant something brushes against the tentacle. It injects venom. It paralyzes prey. It can kill or seriously injure most fish that make the mistake of getting too close. For almost every animal on the reef, an anemone is a wall of death. You go through it once, and you do not go through it again. For the clownfish, the anemone is a living room. How does it do this? How does an animal swim, sleep, and play inside a wall of stinging weapons without getting stung? The answer is one of the strangest pieces of chemistry in the ocean. The clownfish coats itself in a special mucus. And the mucus is not random. The mucus is engineered by the fish itself to either suppress the chemical signals that trigger the anemone to fire or to mimic the anemone's own tissue, so that the anemone's nematocysts do not recognize the fish as foreign at all. The clownfish, in other words, wears a chemical disguise that tells the fortress, "I am one of you. Do not shoot." It is a forged passport. It is identity fraud written in biochemistry, and it works perfectly. Now here is where this stops being just clever and starts being something more like a protection racket. Because the clownfish is not just freeloading. The clownfish pays rent. It pays the anemone in nitrogen, in water flow, in protection from anemone predators. The clownfish drives away butterfly fish that would nibble on the anemone's tentacles. It moves around inside the host, circulating water, increasing oxygen delivery. Its waste fertilizes the symbiotic algae living inside the anemone, boosting the energy supply for both of them. It is, in every sense, a working partnership. The clownfish supplies labor and protection. The anemone supplies venom and shelter. Both get richer than they would be alone. I want you to think about what that means. This is not a cute fish hiding in a flower. This is a tenant who pays in services to a venomous landlord. This is a small mobster who has cut a deal with a much bigger gangster, and together they run a piece of the reef. But here is the part of the clownfish story that nobody talks about, and the part that made me sit back when I first read it. The social structure. Inside every anemone, the clownfish living there form a strict hierarchy. The largest fish, at the top, is female. Below her is a slightly smaller male, the breeding partner. Below him is a line of smaller non-breeding males, each one waiting for the line to move. The whole society is organized by size. There is no voting. There is no fighting for leadership. The biggest one is the queen. Period. And here is the part that changes the whole picture. If the queen dies, the breeding male, the second in line, undergoes a complete sex change. His body restructures. His hormones reorganize. His gonads transition. Within a relatively short period, he becomes a fully functional female. And the largest non-breeding male in the queue steps up to become the new breeding male. The line moves up by one. The system continues. No vacancy, no leadership crisis, no drama. This is called sequential hermaphroditism. And in the clownfish, it is not a quirk. It is the operating system. Every clownfish you have ever seen in a movie, in an aquarium, in a documentary, is part of a society where leadership transfer happens through a biological process most people do not even believe is real when they first hear about it. Let me ask you honestly in the comments, did you know this? Did you know that the cute fish in the kids' movie operates on a chain of command system that includes sex change as a leadership promotion? I did not know until I researched this video, and I am still not over it. There is one more detail I have to tell you because it is, in my opinion, the cruelest joke in the whole story. The clownfish's coloration, the bright orange and white stripes that make it so recognizable, the stripes that have sold 1,000 stuffed animals to children at zoo gift shops. Those stripes are not just decoration. They are a warning. To a predator that has any experience with the reef, those stripes mean, this fish lives in an anemone. Touch this fish and you will get stung. The bright coloration that makes the clownfish look so harmless to us, in the eyes of a reef predator, is a flashing red sign that says, do not touch. The cuteness, in other words, is a costume. The costume is a warning. The warning is backed up by a wall of microscopic harpoons. The fish is not innocent. The fish is wearing the costume of innocence over a fortress of venom. So tell me, in the comments, after everything I just told you, after the chemical forgery, after the protection racket, after the size-based hierarchy with hormonal succession, after the warning colors disguised as cuteness, do you still see a friendly little fish? Or do you see what I see? A small, fearless, calculating animal that figured out, a long time ago, that the safest place on the reef is not somewhere far from danger. The safest place on the reef is inside the danger, allied with the danger, wearing the danger's colors. The clownfish does not run from threats. The clownfish lives inside one. And that, in this entire 8-chapter video, might be the smartest piece of crime I am going to show you. I want you to stop watching the bright fish for a minute. That is what most people do when they look at a reef. They follow the color. They follow the movement. The shoals of yellow, the flashes of blue, the angelfish doing what angelfish do. That is fine. That is what the reef wants you to do in a way. It wants your eye to follow the spectacle. But while you are watching the spectacle, you are missing the predator. He is right there. He has been right there the whole time. 2 feet from where you are looking. Pressed against the side of a coral head, dappled in the same colors as the stone, eyes locked on a corridor of swimming juveniles, completely motionless. Not even his gills are giving him away, because he is taking the slowest breaths he can. He is, in every sense of the word, furniture, until he is not. The grouper is one of the most underrated predators on the reef. And the reason he is underrated is the reason he is so good at his job. He does not move. He does not chase. He does not give you the kind of cinematic hunt that gets put in nature documentaries. The grouper is a sniper. The grouper is a sit-and-wait killer. And what he lacks in drama, he makes up for in something that, in my opinion, is much more impressive. He hunts with physics. Let me explain what I mean by that. When a grouper finally decides to strike, the strike is not what you would imagine. He does not lunge. He does not snap. He does not even particularly move his body forward. What he does is open his mouth. And the inside of that mouth, in a fraction of a second, expands so violently and so suddenly that the pressure inside it drops to almost nothing. The water around the prey, having nowhere else to go, rushes into the vacuum. And the prey, being part of that water, gets pulled inside with it. Not bitten, not chased, inhaled. The grouper does not catch fish. The grouper makes a hole in the ocean, and the fish falls into the hole. I want you to understand how clever this is. Most predators on this reef have to commit. They have to swim. They have to put energy into chasing. They have to risk missing. The grouper has solved all three of those problems at once. The strike costs him almost nothing. The strike is over before the prey has a chance to react. And the strike does not require the prey to be close exactly. It just requires the prey to be inside a very specific distance where the pressure gradient works. Find that distance, and the rest is just waiting for the right fish to drift into the kill zone. Now I want to tell you about the kill zone, because this is where the grouper goes from impressive to something I think is genuinely artful. The grouper does not just sit anywhere. The grouper picks his spot. And his spots, when you study them, are not random. They are corners. They are funnels. They are choke points in the architecture of the reef. The grouper knows somehow that a small fish swimming in open water has 1,000 directions to escape in. But a small fish pressed against a coral wall, or driven into a crevice, or trapped in a corner, has its options reduced to almost nothing. So the grouper picks his post next to the wall, next to the overhang, at the mouth of the crevice. He waits there, blended into the stone, and he lets the geometry of the reef do half the work for him. By the time a fish gets into his strike range, the fish has already lost. The walls have already taken away most of the escape routes. The grouper just has to close the last one. That is not hunting. That is engineering. That is a predator who has, over millions of years, learned to read architecture the way a soldier reads a battlefield. And honestly, the more I researched this animal, the more respect I developed for him. There is something elegant about a hunter who lets the world do most of his work for him. Now, in certain regions of the ocean, the grouper takes this strategy one step further. And this is one of those facts that, when I first read it, I had to verify 3 times because it sounded made up. In parts of the reef, groupers cooperate with moray eels. You heard me right. The grouper, a stout-bodied ambush predator, teams up with the moray eel, a long, thin snake of a fish that can squeeze into spaces the grouper cannot reach. And here is how the partnership works. A small fish escapes the grouper by darting into a crevice. The grouper cannot follow. The crevice is too tight. So the grouper goes and finds a moray eel. Yes, finds one. Approaches it. Does a specific head shake that researchers have actually documented and named. The eel, recognizing the signal, follows the grouper back to the crevice. The eel slides inside. The fish, trying to escape the eel, bursts out the other side of the crevice and straight into the grouper's strike zone. Both predators eat. This is not anecdotal. This is a documented hunting alliance between 2 different species of fish. They communicate. They coordinate. They split the work between 2 body plans optimized for 2 different environments, and they both win. Tell me in the comments, when you read something like that, what do you actually make of it? Because I am still not sure I have fully wrapped my head around it. a predator that recruits other predators, a boss who hires contractors. That is not what we were taught about fish. There is one more thing I want to mention before we move on, because it complicates the grouper's whole story in a way I find quietly fascinating. Many grouper species are protogynous hermaphrodites, which means they start their lives as females and then, as they grow larger, transition to males. The biggest groupers on the reef, the ones holding the best ambush spots, are almost always males who used to be females. The leadership, the prime real estate, the dominant strike positions, all of it is held by individuals who lived an entire life as one sex before becoming another. The grouper is not the same animal at the end of its life that it was at the beginning. It is, in a real biological sense, two animals across one lifespan. So let me ask you something. When you watch a grouper sit beside a coral head, completely still, looking like part of the rock, what do you actually see? A boring fish, a lazy fish, an animal that is not doing anything? Or do you see what I see now, after researching this chapter? An old, patient, calculating predator who has spent years memorizing this exact piece of reef, who knows every corridor, every choke point, every shadow, who has lived as a female and now lives as a male, who recruits eels as accomplices when the situation requires it, who hunts not with teeth but with vacuum pressure precise enough to deserve its own engineering paper. The reef has many predators. The grouper is not the fastest. He is not the loudest. He is not the most charismatic. But in the quiet economics of survival, in the brutal arithmetic of energy and reward, the grouper has built one of the most efficient predation systems in the entire ocean. He does not chase the meal. He waits for the meal to come to him, and the meal almost always does. I want to talk to you about the most unlikely killer on this entire list. If I told you, before we started this video, that one of the 8 criminals I was going to walk you through was the seahorse, you would have laughed. You would have closed the tab. You would have told me to come back when I was serious. Because the seahorse, in the way most people picture it, is not a predator. The seahorse is the cute little ornament, the aquarium decoration, the animal children draw in pencil and stick on the fridge. It does not look dangerous. It does not move dangerously. It does not have teeth or claws or venom or any of the visible weapons that we normally associate with a hunter. So why is the seahorse in this video? The seahorse is in this video because the seahorse is one of the fastest strike predators in the entire ocean, and almost nobody knows it. Let me show you what I mean. Picture a seagrass meadow. The water is slow. The light is filtered through swaying blades of green. Tiny plankton drift past, carried on currents you can barely see. Among the blades, anchored to one of them by a curling tail, is a seahorse, vertical, still, eyes moving independently of each other, each one scanning a different part of the meadow at the same time. The seahorse is doing nothing. The seahorse, as far as anything around it is concerned, is part of the plant. A small crustacean drifts into the picture. It is going about its business. It is feeding. It has no reason to suspect anything. It moves slowly toward the seahorse. It crosses an invisible line. And then, in less than 5/1000ths of a second, the crustacean is gone. I want you to read that number again. 5/1000ths of a second. That is the time it takes the seahorse to pivot its head, open its snout, and inhale its prey through suction. The motion is so fast that high-speed cameras struggle to capture it cleanly. Most predators on this reef strike in tens or hundreds of milliseconds. The seahorse strikes in single digits. The fragile little decoration on the fridge magnet has one of the most explosive feeding mechanisms in the entire animal kingdom. How does it do this? How does an animal that swims slower than almost any fish on the reef produce a motion that fast? The answer is in the neck. The seahorse's head is set at an angle to its body, and along that angle, there are specialized muscles and tendons that store elastic energy. Think of it like a crossbow being slowly drawn back. The seahorse can hold this tension for as long as it needs to, motionless, waiting, while its eyes scan the meadow. And when a target enters the strike zone, the tension releases. The head snaps forward like the bolt of a crossbow firing. The snout opens. A vacuum is created. The water around the prey rushes inward. The prey, having no time to react, goes inward with it. The seahorse does not catch its food. The seahorse triggers a trap that has been quietly cocked the entire time. The animal you thought was harmless has been a loaded weapon sitting in the grass, waiting for the right moment. Now let me tell you about the disguise, because the disguise is the other half of the story. The seahorse does not look like a fish. That is its entire defense. Most fish are streamlined, horizontal, optimized for forward swimming through open water. The seahorse is vertical, upright, holding still. To a predator scanning the meadow for the silhouette of a fish, the seahorse simply does not register. It does not match the pattern the predator's eye is looking for. It looks like a blade of grass. It looks like a piece of drifting plant matter. It looks like background. And the disguise gets better. The seahorse's skin contains chromatophores, the same pigment cells we have seen in other animals on this list, and these cells can shift the seahorse's coloration to match the colors of the meadow it is sitting in. Greens, browns, yellows, soft reds. Some species even grow filamentous appendages from their bodies that look exactly like the algae and epiphytes growing on nearby grass blades. The seahorse does not just hide. The seahorse becomes part of the plant community. It is camouflage so thorough that researchers have spent hours staring at a single patch of seagrass before realizing there were seahorses in front of them the entire time. So the picture I want you to hold in your head is this: vertical animal, anchored to a stem, colored to match the grass, body shaped like vegetation, eyes scanning in two directions at once, with a spring-loaded strike mechanism quietly cocked and ready to fire at any moment. That is not an ornament. That is an assassin. And now we get to the part of the seahorse story that, for me, is the strangest reversal of all: the reproduction. In the seahorse, the males get pregnant. I know how that sounds. I know the first time you hear it, you think it must be a metaphor. It is not. The male seahorse has a structure called a brood pouch on his abdomen. During mating, the female deposits her eggs into this pouch. Fertilization happens inside the pouch. And then the male, for the next several weeks, carries the developing embryos. He regulates the salinity inside the pouch. He oxygenates them. He provides nutrients through a network of blood vessels that structurally looks a lot like the placental tissue that mammals use to nourish their young. The pouch is not a pocket. The pouch is a fully functioning gestational environment, and it is on the male. When the embryos are ready, the male goes into labor. He contracts. He releases the young into the water in a series of pulses. He gives birth. Tell me honestly in the comments, did you know this? Did you know that the seahorse, on top of being a spring-loaded ambush predator, also has the only true male pregnancy in the vertebrate world? Because I think this is one of the most underrated biological facts on the entire planet, and most people have never heard it. So let me ask you to look at the seahorse again, now that you know what you know. You see an animal that strikes faster than almost any predator on the reef. You see an animal whose disguise is so complete that researchers walk past it. You see a male who gestates his own young in a pouch that functions almost like a uterus. You see a creature whose body has been refined over millions of years into a vertical, pivoting, camouflaged, gender-reversed killing machine, and it sits in the grass, looking gentle, looking ornamental, looking like nothing at all. The seahorse is not the most dangerous animal in this video. It is not going to kill you. It is not going to harm anything bigger than a piece of plankton. But it is, in its own quiet way, one of the most refined criminals on the reef. And it has been hiding in plain sight, in coastal meadows all over the world, for longer than most of us realize. The reef is full of obvious predators. The seahorse reminds us that the cleverest ones are the ones we never thought to suspect. I have to admit something to you before we start this chapter. When I first started researching this video, when I made my list of 8 ocean criminals, The parrotfish was on the list because of an obvious crime: the crunch. You have heard it if you have ever been near a reef with a snorkel. That deep, audible, almost industrial crunch of a fish biting into coral. Hard, with force. You can hear it underwater from a surprising distance. It is the sound of the reef being damaged in real time. And the parrotfish, with its bright colors and its ridiculous beak, is the one doing the damage. I thought I had a Vandal on my hands. I thought, here we go. The bully of the coral neighborhood. The fish that just chews up other animals' homes for a living. Open and shut case. Then I started reading. And the more I read, the more I realized I had this fish completely backwards. The parrotfish is on this list. But not for the reason I thought. The parrotfish is on this list because it is, in my honest opinion, the strangest criminal in the entire video. Because the crime it appears to be committing, the destruction of coral, is not actually a crime. It is maintenance. It is, if you want to be technical about it, ecosystem repair. The parrotfish is not the Vandal. The parrotfish is the cleanup crew. And I owe it an apology. Let me explain. The reef looks to most of us like a peaceful place. Pretty corals, colorful fish, gently waving plants. But under that surface, the reef is in a constant turf war. The corals want space. The algae want space. And here is the part that most people do not realize. The algae are winning. Or at least, they would be winning if nobody was cropping them back. Algae grow fast. They cover coral. They block the sunlight that the coral needs to feed its symbiotic partners. Left alone, algae will smother a reef. They will turn a vibrant coral ecosystem into a green, mushy graveyard within a few seasons. So the reef needs something to keep the algae in check. The reef needs a grazer. The reef needs a mower. The reef has the parrotfish. That ridiculous beak you see on a parrotfish is not for chewing food in any normal sense. It is for scraping. The parrotfish goes up to a coral surface that has been overgrown with algae, presses its beak against the rock, and grinds. It scrapes the algae off. And in the process, yes, it also takes a thin layer of the coral skeleton with it. That is the crunch you hear. That is the sound that made me think the parrotfish was destroying the reef. But the crunch is not vandalism. The crunch is the algae being removed before they can take over. The thin layer of coral that comes off with the algae is, in the math of the reef, an acceptable cost. Because without that grazing pressure, the reef as a whole would collapse. Studies have shown this very clearly. In regions of the ocean where parrotfish populations have been overfished, the reefs go into a kind of biological tailspin. Algae explode. Coral recruitment fails. Biodiversity drops. The neighborhood without its loud chewing cleanup crew falls apart. The fish that sounded like it was wrecking the place was the one keeping the place alive. Now, I have to tell you about what happens to the coral after the parrotfish eats it, because this is where the story gets even better. The algae get digested. The energy gets absorbed. But the calcium carbonate skeleton of the coral, the actual hard mineral part of the bite, mostly does not. It passes through the parrotfish's digestive system. It gets ground down even finer by a structure inside the throat called a pharyngeal mill, which is essentially a second set of teeth dedicated to crushing the inorganic material. And eventually that material comes out the other end, as sand. White, fine, beautiful sand. I want you to sit with that for a second. The white sand beaches of the tropics, the ones you have seen on postcards, the ones tourists fly across the world to lie on. A significant portion of that sand is, scientifically and verifiably, parrotfish waste. The beaches are made of poop. Specifically, poop made of pulverized coral skeleton that has been processed through the gut of a brightly colored fish that has been chewing the reef for the last 100 million years. I am not making this up. There are studies that have measured this. A single large parrotfish can produce hundreds of pounds of fine sand per year. Multiply that by every parrotfish on every tropical reef on Earth, and you have a major source of the world's tropical beach sand. The Vandal does not just maintain the reef. The Vandal builds the beaches. Tell me in the comments, did you know that? Because I genuinely did not, until I researched this chapter. And every time I think about it now, when I see a postcard of some white sand beach in the Maldives or the Caribbean, I think, that beach is fish poop. And I cannot get the thought out of my head. There is one more thing about the parrotfish that I have to mention before we close, because it adds another strange dimension to this animal. Many parrotfish species are sequential hermaphrodites. Like the grouper, like the clownfish, the parrotfish goes through a sex change as it grows. Females transition into males, and the change is not subtle. The new male develops dramatically different coloration, brighter, more vivid. The terminal males of some species look almost like a different species entirely from the females and juveniles. Bright greens, electric blues, patterns of color that look painted on. The same animal, at different points in its life, wears two completely different uniforms. The reef is full of animals that change sex. I want you to notice this pattern across the chapters of this video, because it is one of the things I find most fascinating about coral reef life. The clownfish does it. The grouper does it. The parrotfish does it. There is something about reef ecosystems that selects for this kind of biological flexibility. Identity in the reef is not fixed. The reef does not deal in permanent labels. The reef deals in roles, and the roles shift with size and circumstance. So let me ask you something before we go to the next chapter. After everything I just told you, do you still see the parrotfish as a vandal? Or do you see it the way I see it now? A bright, noisy, sex-changing, beach-building, algae-mowing, ecosystem-maintaining animal that I completely misjudged at the start of my own research. The reef does not have many heroes. Most of the animals in this video are doing something brutal to make a living. But the parrotfish, in its loud and messy way, is one of the few criminals whose crimes turn out to be a public service. The crunch you hear on the reef is not destruction. It is the sound of the reef being saved. We have come to the last chapter of this video, the last case file, the last criminal in our lineup. And I want you to know, before I introduce you to this one, that I saved this animal for the end on purpose. Because of all 8 creatures in this video, this is the one that, when I sat down to research it, I genuinely was not ready for. You will look at this animal, and you will think it is jewelry. You will think it is a piece of living art. You will think nothing of it. And then I will tell you what it does, and you will look at it again, and you will not see jewelry anymore. You will see something much stranger. This is the sea slug, the nudibranch, and the crime it commits is not theft of property. It is not aggression. It is not violence. The sea slug, in my honest opinion, commits the most sophisticated crime in this entire video. The sea slug steals weapons. Let me show you what I mean. A nudibranch crawls along a piece of coral, slowly, almost meditatively. The body is no thicker than a leaf. There is no shell. There is no armor. There is no speed. From the outside, this is the easiest meal on the reef. Any predator with eyes and a mouth could take this animal in a single bite, and the animal has no way to stop it. By every measurement that should matter in a brutal ecosystem, the sea slug should have been wiped out millions of years ago. It was not. It is everywhere. It is thriving. And the reason it is thriving is one of the strangest pieces of biology I have ever read about. When the sea slug feeds, it does not feed on safe things. It feeds on the most dangerous animals on the reef. Stinging hydroids, anemones, conidarians armed with the same microscopic harpoons we talked about back in the clownfish chapter. The sea slug crawls up to a hydroid bristling with stinging cells, opens its mouth and starts to eat. The hydroid fires its nematocysts. The sea slug ignores them. The sea slug swallows the tissue, harpoons and all. And here is where the crime happens. Most animals, when they eat something dangerous, digest the danger away. The toxins get broken down. The weapons get neutralized. That is what digestion is for. The sea slug does the opposite. The sea slug sorts. Inside its body, there are specialized cellular pathways that pick the still loaded, still functional stinging cells out of the food, leave them undischarged, and root them intact up to the tips of fleshy appendages on the slug's back, called serrata. The cells are not destroyed. They are stored. They are filed away in tiny pockets at the ends of those appendages, fully armed, fully operational, waiting. When a predator later tries to bite the sea slug, the pressure triggers those stolen weapons to fire. The fish that thought it was getting an easy meal gets a mouthful of borrowed harpoons. It learns quickly that the slow, soft animal is not soft at all. It is loaded. This behavior has a name. It is called kleptoknidy, from the Greek root for theft. The sea slug is a literal weapons thief. It does not manufacture its own defense. It outsources the manufacturing to other animals, steals the finished product, and walks around with someone else's arsenal embedded in its skin. Tell me in the comments, when you read something like that, what do you actually make of it? Because I keep going back to this fact and I cannot get over it. The sea slug, this ornamental-looking crawler, has figured out a strategy that human militaries can only dream of. Acquire weapons through consumption of the enemy. Recycle the enemy's defense into your own. Carry the cost of nothing, but bear the protection of everything. And the sea slug does not stop there. Some species do something even stranger. Some species feed on sponges and algae that produce toxic chemical compounds, and the slug, instead of breaking those compounds down, stores them inside its body, sometimes even modifying them into more potent versions. The slug becomes pharmacologically loaded. Its tissues are full of borrowed toxins that make it dangerous to eat from the inside out. And then there is the color, because the colors on a nudibranch are unlike anything else on the reef. Electric blues, incandescent oranges, patterns that look like someone took a paintbrush to the body and went too far on purpose. These animals do not blend in. They do not hide. They glow. They advertise. And the advertisement is honest. The colors are saying, to any predator on the reef, do not eat me. I am loaded. I am toxic. Try it and find out. In biology, this is called aposematism. Bright warning coloration backed up by real danger. Bees do it on land. So do certain frogs. The nudibranch does it underwater, with a level of artistic flair that, frankly, makes most warning colors look conservative by comparison. There is one more behavior I want to tell you about before we close the chapter, because it adds the final twist to the sea slug story. Some species of sea slug do not just steal weapons. Some species steal photosynthesis itself. They eat algae, and they keep the chloroplasts, the cellular machinery that converts sunlight into energy, alive and functioning inside their own bodies. For weeks afterward, the slug can sit in sunlight and generate energy directly, like a plant. It is called kleptoplasty, stolen photosynthesis. So let me put it together. You have an animal that steals weapons from one prey, stores toxins from another, and in some cases steals the ability to do photosynthesis from a third. It defends itself with someone else's harpoons. It poisons predators with someone else's chemistry. It powers itself with someone else's solar panels. And it does all of this while wearing some of the most beautiful colors on the entire reef. The sea slug does not have a single defense mechanism of its own. The sea slug is a composite. The sea slug is a collage. The sea slug is, in the most literal sense, the sum of what it has stolen. And it has been doing this for millions of years. So here we are, at the end of this video. 8 chapters. 8 criminals. The Mastermind Octopus. The Street Brawler Crab. The Night Shift Lobster. The Gangster Clownfish. The Ambush Boss Grouper. The Silent Sniper Seahorse. The Misjudged Vandal Parrotfish. And now, the Chemical Assassin Sea Slug. I want to thank you for sitting with me through all of it. Tell me in the comments, which one of these animals surprised you the most? I have my own answer, but I want to hear yours. And if you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. There are more cases. There are more criminals. The reef has not run out of stories. The ocean is full of secrets. We have only just started uncovering them.